Welcome back to WeAreSC's Recruiting Roundup with Scott Schrader. I'm Dylan Brashier, and we're back with you on another Friday with some very important recruiting news. Just as a few days ago, Tre'Quon Fegans, class of 2022 cornerback or defensive back from Alabama, has just locked in his official visit to USC for May 5th. Scott?
Yeah, this is one of those additions. If USC was able to pull this off, would kind of fall in line with Anthony Lucas and Bear Alexander, and because Tre'Quon was he was at least a top 150 ranked guy by On3. So this is a guy that's a redshirt freshman, as you said, University of Alabama. He's from Alabama. And he was the guy that I hit up when he entered the transfer portal. He put up on Twitter a list of schools that had contacted him. So I hit him up, and he said he had interest, and I asked him if he had a visit date, and he said May 5th. But it wasn't set in stone at that time. So now as we kind of progress through a week since he and I first started communicating, it's now a firm visit date. He will be at USC tomorrow through Sunday with his family. And oftentimes, just like Bear Alexander, just like Anthony Lucas, just like several guys, most of the guys that USC brings in as transfers that are high-profile guys, like Tre'Quon, usually take the visit, and a day or so later, they're announced their commitment. So this is something to watch really, really closely. And again, this would be a huge addition to the defense. USC fans are probably thinking, why does USC need another cornerback? Yeah, cornerback's one of those positions where literally you could play five of them on the field at one time. And you never know what's going to happen with injuries. You never know how versatile a guy is. Guy might be able to play nickel, might be able to, even if they needed him at safety, he might be able to move there. And I think Tre'Quon is an extremely versatile defensive back, but I do think that USC is looking at him as a guy to come in and add some depth to the nickel position.
For sure. And a few days ago, USC made an offer for Tre'Quon Fegans' brother, Anquan Fegans, a five-star class of 25 safety. So what does that mean for Tre'Quon Fegans and for our secondary in the future?
Yeah, this is Anquan was somebody that I actually met in February at a Battle 7-on-7 event in Las Vegas. And at that time, I was just talking Chris Hawkins, who played at USC, and Sua Cravens, who played at USC. They coached a 7-on-7 team called Trillion Boys. And Anquan was playing for Trillion Boys. And so I went up to Sua and Chris Hawkins. I think it was actually Sua who I asked. I said, any of these guys? Because this Trillion Boys 7-on-7 team is just it's like an all-star team. There are guys from all over the country. So there's guys from Florida, Texas, California. You could name some of the big states, Georgia, Washington, D.C. area. And I asked Sue if there was any guys that, maybe have some interest in USC we're talking to. And he mentioned Anquan had talked about how he wanted to visit USC. So I went and asked him, and he didn't have an offer at the time, but he had been communicating a little bit with Dante Williams. And, it's just, I asked him, I go, do you think these schools maybe aren't as interested as you thought they might be, like a USC, because your brother's there and there's a great chance of you joining him at Alabama? And what are the percentages that you will follow your brother to Alabama? And he said probably an 85% chance. So fast forward to now, and his brother's no longer at Alabama. USC has offered Anquan. And, I think, this whether or not he ends up following his brother and playing at USC is a little early to start talking that way, because Tre'Quon hasn't even visited yet. And we don't even know if he's going to like it, but he's a five-star safety from Oxford, Alabama. He attends one of the premier high schools in the country, the number one high school, as far as top recruits are coming from these days, in Thompson High School. Hoover used to be the program in Alabama, and for all I know, it still is. But this Thompson program is big time. So yeah, he will not be with his brother though this weekend. He will visit at some point, and his dad, Antoine Fegans, told me that he really wanted Anquan. We're going to start saying all these names, and people are going to be like, okay. It's going to start spinning. Tre'Quon, Anquan, Antoine. But yeah, this is a big development, and we'll see what happens. We're probably going to have something very interesting to talk about here after the weekend.
Definitely. And as a USC fan, it'd be fantastic to take a five-star recruit right out of Alabama's backyard.
Sure. You can. I mean, this has just been part of Lincoln Riley building the roster. And USC fans sometimes get caught up in the high school end of the recruiting, and that's vital. You have to bring in the high school kids, but just look at how they're building the roster with some really key additions from the transfer portal, and Tre'Quon would be one of those.
Of course. Moving on, a top 10 interior offensive lineman, Jason Zandamela, just made an announcement for an official visit to USC. Scott?
Yeah, he's the kid that came for an unofficial visit about 2 weeks ago. I don't think he was at the spring game. I think he was at the scrimmage on April 8th. I don't have any way to look at my dates right now. I usually need cheat sheets for this type of stuff. But after that visit, he said it was a great visit, and I couldn't connect with him. It sounded like he was willing to talk and all that kind of stuff, but somehow we lost communication. He didn't get back to me on a message, so I hit up his coach. And he's from a school called Clearwater Academy, and it's in Clearwater, Florida. It's the same school that Lucas Simmons went to, and Lucas came out last June for an official visit to USC. He was USC was one of his top 3 schools. So Jason Zandamela has now set up his official visit to USC. And this is another guy to where, Florida State got Lucas Simmons. Clearwater's in Florida. There's anytime you're able to go visit some of these schools multiple times, like these guys can go visit Florida, Florida State, Miami, and some of the schools that are closer to the region. It's a huge advantage for them. But, we'll see how this works out with Jason. But yeah, he's I don't know what number visitor he is that we've added to the list, but we've got about 16, 17 guys that are set for June visits, whether it's June 2nd through the 4th, 16th through the 18th. And Jason will be coming on June 16th through the 18th.
Perfect. So On3 has a recruiting prediction machine, and apparently USC is in the running for the top 4 O-linemen in the country. Scott?
Yeah, they're not only in the running with the On3 recruiting prediction machine, which the recruiting prediction machine. Some of these guys there have been no predictions that have been submitted by the recruiting experts, but currently, usually it's figured out by how many times they visited the school, how close the schools he's looking at are to where he lives, how many openings at the position that they play are available going forward, how many guys they've had drafted over the years at those positions. So the recruiting prediction machine is one of those things where I honestly don't know how they figure it out completely. But that doesn't change the fact that USC is currently leading for 4 of the top offensive linemen in the country. And we won't talk a whole lot about him, but we will mention that DeAndre Carter, and if I was to make a prediction today, I'm not making any more predictions unless a guy I'll be making predictions, but not unless they have an announcement date set. I might waver from that a little bit here and there. But if I had to make a prediction for DeAndre Carter, it would absolutely be for USC. I think he's visited 19 times in the last year and a half.
Wow.
And he loves coming back. Says every time he comes back, the visit's more and more special. So he's one. Isaiah Garcia. He just recently set up his official visit to USC. So he's part of that impressive group that'll be coming in June. He's from Utah. USC's leading with him. They're ahead of Oregon right now, 38% to 33%. Garcia is the number 188 overall prospect in the nation for On3, so he's a big-time target, just like DeAndre Carter. Also, another new addition, I don't think it's been reported yet, we'll report it tonight, is Justin Tawanuu from Huntington Beach High School. He just got his USC offer yesterday or today. I was at Huntington Beach High School earlier today, and he is going to be visiting June 16th through the 18th. And I don't know what his ranking is, but he's another really extremely talented guy. He has an official visit set for UCLA for this weekend, and another school he's hoping to visit is Tennessee. And then there's Marquise Thorpe Taylor from Washington. They are also leading for him. The lead's not significant with some of these guys like Tawanuu. USC's at 13% to 7% for the team that's in second, but Marquise Thorpe Taylor is at 70% odds for USC. So those are the 4 guys, offensive linemen. Recruiting fans can't get enough of hearing about defensive and offensive linemen, so I figured we'd throw that in today.
Oh, of course. So we're going to go away from the recruiting topic for a bit, but ESPN has released their spring power rankings, and USC has made the top 5 with number 4. Scott?
Yeah, it's after last season, it was really disappointing to watch the defense perform as it did.
Of course.
And even with that, USC was a couple of plays away from making the playoffs last year, even with that troubling defense that they had. So there have been some huge additions this offseason. It's well documented. USC fans, I'm not telling anything you don't already know. But I just felt like as they were building this roster this offseason that USC is clearly a top 4 or 5 program. That, in my opinion. Now, I don't know if I agree or disagree with where a lot of these other programs are listed, but just even talking to high school coaches and a few other college coaches, just the additions of Anthony Lucas and Bear Alexander on the defensive line, just those 2 guys, which are the latest, is extremely significant. But then you start talking about Jack Sullivan from Purdue and Kion Bars from Arizona, and you're talking about some of the high school guys. Braylon Shelby's not even at USC yet. Elijah Hughes is in USC. But you talk about Sam Green. We've talked about this in the last couple of weeks, this defensive line topic. But I think that people are looking at what USC did this offseason, and it really is hard to keep USC out of the top 5 for a lot of people. So so this was exciting for USC fans to see. It creates a lot of discussion, and you had an interesting comment on where some of the other programs are listed, though.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like, starting off the top 10, I mean, we got Georgia at 1, which makes sense, reigning national champions. 2 is Michigan, which I can see the hype for, but 3 is Florida State. I mean, I know quarterback Jordan Travis is elusive, and, they're probably the clear number 1 in the ACC, but I'm curious to see why they're 3.
Yeah. I mean, that's a fair question. I think that a large part, as you and I were talking a little bit, off camera, so to speak. They've recruited well, and they did really well in the transfer portal as well. So, I think that, you almost have to start looking at the whole package on what these programs, who these programs brought in. You can't just go, look, USC it was disappointing USC didn't have a top 5 recruiting class. They finished 7th, but you don't need to have a top 5 recruiting class anymore. You got to bring in a good group of high school football players. You got to bring in guys you can develop and have around for a while, have some continuity. But you have to start looking at the transfer portal and everybody that came in to add to the roster. I think Florida State's done really well there.
Very true. But then also, I'm looking later down the list. I'm surprised to see Alabama at 6, and I'm honestly, I enjoy seeing Alabama so far down the top 10. And they just brought in Tyler Buckner from Notre Dame to be for that quarterback battle with Jalen Milroe. So I'm excited to see who's going to win that battle.
Yeah, I look at the situation at quarterback at Alabama, and no disrespect to Tyler Buckner, but if you're at the point where you're bringing him in, Alabama's got some question marks at quarterback.
Definitely. And then, later down we got LSU at 7. Makes sense. Jaden Daniels looks strong. 8, Penn State. Okay, I can get behind that. And then Clemson, number 9. I feel like how Cade Klubnik can get in that offense, get the offensive going this season is going to be a clear, definitive answer whether Clemson's going to be good or bad.
Yeah. The thing about Cade is, he could be one of those quarterbacks. The stars have to align and everything has to work out for you. But he's the guy that many consider talented enough to vie for a Heisman Trophy.
I agree with that. Yeah, I feel like he was definitely upgrade from DJ
Uiagalelei.
Yes, I feel like he was definitely upgraded, and we'll definitely see how that can fare out this season.
Yep.
With 10, I mean, we always see him in the top 10. Will they get past week 6 in the top 10? We'll see. But Texas, are they back with Quinn Ewers? I don't know. They were 8-5 last season. I know he was injured, but they have a semi-upgraded squad this season. No Bijan Robinson.
Yeah, I mean that's a significant loss.
Of course.
That he he was such an enormous part of that offense last year. And I think people will know, duh, Scott, but I think if you really go and look at the stats and you talk to people that covered Texas, it's even more than most of us realize on how vital that Bijan was to that Texas offense. Because the quarterback play was very uninspiring last season.
Yep.
You know, you can't expect a true freshman to come in and just crush it. And that's what they have in Arch Manning. And you had a redshirt freshman come in Quinn Ewers. He hadn't played before. So you can't, it's hard to have high expectations for those two. So I think you're right. This offseason, have these guys made the leap to the point to where Texas can finish and live up to that top 10 ranking. And I'll be honest with you, Texas seemed really close last year. So, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like if USC wants to make a run, this year is the year we got to do it. I mean, Alabama's trending down. Clemson's in the question mark. I feel like Georgia, they have a quarterback battle right now. Their future is not decided. So I feel like USC needs to swoop in and make their mark.
Yeah, when you bring in a quarterback and you have a guy like Caleb Williams, that's 100% how you have to look at it. You have to do whatever you can to maximize what you're able to accomplish this season. So, USC's not done with the transfer portal yet. They're still, even though the date for the undergrad transfers is the only way I could put it, has come to a close. Graduate transfers can still enter the portal and still sign with schools over the next month and a half or so. So USC might not be done yet.
Of course, yeah, definitely. Job's not finished. Going back to recruiting, a big part of recruiting is name, image, and likeness, the NIL deal, how players can make money based off of their name and image. So, Scott and I are going to discuss some players and their NIL evaluation for where they're at in their business ventures yet.
Yes. Well, one of the features that we have at On3, we actually have an entire part of our company that just focuses on name, image, and likeness.
Oh, wow.
And the deals and everything that's involved with NIL. And these guys are really, really talented that do it. So there's an algorithm, and they have a way of figuring out what the NIL valuations are of all of the top. I think they do the top 300 places. They may go beyond that. I hate to out myself as being ignorant, and Shannon Terry probably wouldn't appreciate if he watches this hearing me say that. I will be informed next time. But Marshall Levinson, who was a new addition to our staff, and he's just been crushing it for us, as have you. He did an article on the 3 commits and what their NIL valuations are. So I'm just going to briefly talk about that. Xavier Jordan is at number 1, 132,000.
Wow.
Joey Olsen, tight end from Oregon, number 1 player in Oregon for the class of 2024, has an NIL valuation of 79,000. And Bryan Jackson, the most recent commit for USC, McKinney, Texas running back, has an NIL valuation of 24,000. Now, what we'll do down the road, we might take 1, we take 2, we may take all 3 of these guys. But what we'll do at some point later on down the road is we will give an update on these guys and see where they stand. And it's what's crazy about these valuations is Dylan Stewart, the number 1 ranked player in the nation for On3, announced his top school, or there was a prediction made for him by Chad Simmons, and just all the attention that brought him raised his NIL valuation like a lot.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So he gained that many more followers on Instagram and Twitter to where it impacted his NIL valuation that much. So this is a topic that I don't think a lot of people understand. And I think what we may do, it's usually just you and I on this kind of stuff, but I think occasionally it might be worth us to maybe add somebody else over in the window over here who covers NIL for On3 and get some expert detailed information from those guys and a perspective that maybe I'm not able to provide. But name, image, and likeness is a hot deal, and these players. Just a funny side story. Pardon my rant. There was a high school coach that came up to me last year and he said, "Scott, I can't stand that NIL valuation part of your company." I go, "Well, what?" I go, "What's up?" He says, "Because I have players now asking me where their money is." They see these, they, it's kind of like, yeah, my NIL valuation is 24,000. I'm,
Where's the money?
Yeah. So show me the money. So these valuations are great and they are significant, but just because it says you're worth $24,000 doesn't mean you're going to get paid that right now.
Of course. Okay, thank you for tuning in to another edition of WeAreSC's Recruiting Roundup. We'll see you guys next Friday. Bye on.
Right on.